Limbus Company is the best game I can't recommend without like a 20-minute disclaimer. The writing is some of the strongest in the gacha space. However, the gameplay loop forces you into a single team composition for like hours to days. The music makes you feel things that you didn't know that you could anymore. And the community? Well, they'll fight you whether you say something good or bad about the games regardless. This is an uphill battle those of us in this creator space have. Make a video glazing the game and we are called cult fanatics. Criticizing it constructively and, well, it can get much worse. Even with all of this, the game is, well, brilliant and broken, and nobody wants to have both conversations at the same time. But that's what we're doing here today, so let's have it. And by it, I mean the full picture. Not just the good, not just the bad, the stuff in between that nobody talks about because it doesn't fit neatly into either column. Because that's where Limbus Company actually lives. It's somewhere in the messy middle. So this is the full picture, the good, the bad, and everything I'm probably going to get yelled at for saying. Let's start with what Limbus Company gets right, because it does get a lot right. And you guys would all pull out the pitchforks if I didn't start with the writing. When this game commits to a concept, it doesn't half-ass it. It takes basic narrative ideas like guilt and identity and what you owe to the person you used to be and pushes them until they crack wide open. And I don't mean in an edgy way or with shallow themes here either. I mean it actually explores what happens when a character's entire worldview gets dismantled, and it does it with the patience of a game that knows it has a long road ahead. Sometimes it feels like that patience is a problem, and we'll get to that. But when it pays off, nothing in the gacha space comes close. The thing is, the slow writing isn't accidental. This game knows it has time. It's not trying to get you in and out in a weekend. It's building something that's meant to be lived in, checked in on, argued about between updates. That's a different kind of storytelling than most games attempt. This game is serialized, it's long form, and it trusts you to remember details across months of content. Whether that trust is always earned is a different question though, but the ambition is actually real. The characterization is the backbone. Each of the sinners gets their own arc, their own moment where the game stops and says, okay, this is who this person is. And it doesn't rush it. It doesn't introduce 15 new main characters every canto to keep things fresh. It grows the world through side characters, the fixers, the syndicants, the colors lurking in the background, while keeping the core cast tight. And that's smart storytelling. That's a game that understands its ensemble. You spend enough time with each sinner that when their arc hits, you actually feel it, because you've been sitting with them, watching them be annoying, funny, broken, and just human. The payoff works because the setup was patient enough to let them be people first. And if riots would start if I forgot about the writing, well then a war would break out if I forgot one of the biggest lifters in the game. That is not the story, and that's the Millie music. And I mean, come on, you know, everyone knows. Millie doesn't just score scenes. Millie is the core of the scene. Millie is to Limbus what John Williams was to all the films your parents used to watch, or probably still do, from the 80s and 90s. There are moments in this game where the vocal track drops and you forget you're playing a mobile gacha. The amount of the game that the music carries is just so high. It turns good writing into unforgettable writing. The music just hits different, and everyone who's heard it knows it. The thing is, Millie's music don't play during the casual stuff. Not during your normal sinner banter, not during random encounters. It's saved for the moments that actually matter. Boss fights, end of canto climaxes, the beats where everything comes apart. And because you don't hear it constantly, every single time those tracks kick in, you know something is about to hit. And then there's the IDs. The mirror world identities are genuinely one of the smartest design choices the game ever made. Every new ID batch isn't just a gameplay pull, it's a narrative question. What if this sinner made a different choice? What if they ended up here instead of over there? It keeps the cast relevant without bloating the story. It gets people excited to see new versions of the characters they already care about. And it does world building without exposition dumps. The game rewards you for paying attention to the broader Project Moon universe. Connections that don't get spelled out, they just exist for people who know. An ID isn't just a costume, it's a window into a version of this character that could have been. And when you pull for one, you're not just pulling for stats, you're pulling for a story. And that's a pretty clever way to make the monetization feel meaningful instead of predatory. Whether it stays meaningful is something we'll get into. Quick pause if you're new here, this is a channel for people who take RPGs seriously. Subscribe if you want more like this. And now back to the part where I make those who like the first half of the video kinda mad. Okay, so the good is really good, but before we get into the bad, there's this middle space. The stuff that isn't really a win or a failure, it's just complicated. The stuff where the game design choice is both the reason you love the game and the reason you're frustrated with it. And if we skip this, we're not being honest about what Limbus Company actually is. The gacha model. It's the thing that makes Limbus Company possible, and the thing that limits it. Without gacha, there is no Limbus Company. The funding model is what gives Project Moon the runway to tell a story this long, and this ambitious, and well, this weird. And that's kind of the truth here, guys. But the gacha model is also why the game can't just be a visual novel. It has to be a game. It has to pull you out of that story that you love so much so that you can have a combat scene. It has to have a progression system and a resource economy and pool mechanics, and sometimes you can feel the tension and moments where the story wants to breathe, but the game needs you to go fight something so that you can feel like you're actually playing a game, and the gacha funds the story. The story is sometimes constrained by the gacha, but both things are true. The story is great, and the gacha does both help and hurt it. The slow burn. I praised the writing for being patient, and I meant it, but patience is a double-edged thing. The same commitment to slow storytelling that makes the payoffs hit is what makes the stretches between payoffs feel like a desert. When you're in a good Kanto, the pacing is a feature. When you're in a slow one, it's a bug. You guys have all said this about Kanto 4. It's the one you guys talk the most crap about when it comes to the pacing. And the game doesn't always know which one it is. The ambition of telling a serialized story across years of updates is staggering, but it also means some updates are just setup. Some intervals are just waiting. And if you're all caught up, living through that wait in real time, the pacing issues just hit differently than they do for someone binging the whole thing like a year later. The ID system is both narrative and a monetization system can be flawed. I said the IDs were a smart design, and they are, but they also exist to make money, and the further into the game we get, the harder it is to separate this ID has an interesting story from, ooh, this ID is a power unit that happens to have some lore attached to it. The system that made the cast feel alive and dynamic is the same system that creates the power creep problem. Both things live in the same mechanic, and that's not a criticism, it's an observation about what this game is. It's a gacha that wants to be literature, and most of the time, the tension between those two things is what makes this whole thing interesting. Alright, I'm locked in now and braced for it. Now it is time for the bad. And the first thing that we gotta talk about, guys, is the power creep. It's here. Most of you will argue how much of a problem it is, but it's here to stay regardless. Newer IDs aren't just different, they're better and getting stronger by the minute. This is not a coincidence, it's actually a part of their business model. The problem isn't that the new content exists, the problem is the power differential makes older IDs feel like dead weight. And in a game where you've invested real, actual hours into building a team, watching that team become obsolete feels really bad. It feels like the game is punishing you for liking the old stuff. And there's a version of this where the power creep is gentle enough that it doesn't matter, where older's IDs stay viable even if they're not optimal. We've all had to throw away units that don't match anymore. The Blood Fiends, the Nails, the sweet green suits, all thrown to the wayside to stronger units. Hell, the Rupture meta is now just 𝐓𝐡𝐢𝐬. Limbus Company is in a constant state of flux. Some IDs age out, some become unplayable in current content, and the game doesn't give you an easy way back to relevance without spending resources you've already spent once. Speaking about staying in relevance, once you get your new units, there is the inevitable, the grind. If you've played Limbus Company, you know what I'm about to say. The resource economy in this game forces you to commit to one team for massive stretches of content. You can't experiment without farming for hours for ID training tickets and the thread needed to uptie your units. You can't easily swap around. You pick your 12, your team, and you're stuck with them. Because the cost of building anyone new is so high that switching feels like starting over in a game built on the premise of what if your favorite character was different. That's a design contradiction. You may not think it, but think about it for just 1 second, guys, please. The IDs exist to let you explore different versions of the cast, but the economy says pick one or suffer. The game gives you a toy box and then locks the toys behind a paywall of time. And yeah, you can build multiple teams, eventually. But eventually in this game is measured in weeks, not days. That's not respect for your time, that's a retention strategy dressed up as progression. Then there's the pacing, and Kanto 4 and 8 are the biggest examples we got. Each one has stretches where the game just stops, not in a slow burn way, why are we still here way? The writing is strong enough that when it's moving, you're locked in. But when it stalls, you feel every minute. And in a game where the good parts are so good, the slow parts feel even slower by comparison. The thing is, the pacing issues aren't bad writing, they're more like editing issues. The story being told in Kanto 4 and 8 is worth telling. The problem is, well, let me give you a couple examples real quick. In Kanto 4, people complain about the amount of combat between the story nodes, like the game was padding out the Kanto to make it look bigger. Project Moon responded by allowing you to skip some of the content, and even now it feels a bit bloated. It's better, but it's still bloated. In Kanto 8, most of the audience checked out after that amazing dungeon and its boss fights. And I don't deal in absolutes, for only the Sith do that, but most people I've spoken to could not care less about the 𝐸𝐴𝐻 fight, and said it felt more like an add-on that they could have done without. Not really the gold standard of Project Moon writing, to say the least. When you're playing a Kanto that's already long, that extra weight turns a good story into an endurance test. I know 8 is no longer here, but you know, the endgame content is also something that we gotta talk about. Or the lack of it. Right now, once you're caught up, there's not much to do. The refraction railway is fine, but it's not a permanent solution. The game needs something that respects the time investment of players who've been here since day one. Something that isn't just grind the same content, but harder. And this matters more for Limbus than it does for other gacha games because the story is the content. Once you're caught up on the story, the game has to give you a reason to keep logging in, and most gacha games would use FOMO to build this reason up for you. But with the grind and play system of Limbus, as long as you don't miss the previous season, everything can be grabbed in a relatively short amount of time also. Right now, the only reason to keep signing in every day is if you want the new banners or IDs, or events with some timers on them. And I can hear the counter arguments already. The grind is part of the end game, but come on guys. In a story-driven game like this, I feel the community deserves a bit more than just grind out all of our IDs. One cool thing that Project Moon did was the 3-year anniversary event. Something like that, but smaller during the Wall Purges events, would go a long way to pulling in and holding more players, at least in my humble opinion, with maybe just a tad bit more story being told in said event. And then managers, there's the community. And I want to be careful here because this isn't the community is bad. This is the community is passionate. The community loves this game. And that's not a bad thing. That's the best thing Limbus Company has going for it. A game with a community this dedicated, this willing to dig into lore, this willing to create and share and argue about what it all means. That's a gift. Most games would kill for this. But here's where it becomes a problem. When that passion turns into defense, when any criticism, no matter how measured, gets treated like an attack, the community stops being the game's biggest strength and starts being its biggest blind spot. You cannot say anything negative about Limbus Company without someone jumping in to explain you're wrong for having the opinion. Not that the opinion is incorrect, but why you're wrong for having it. And that shuts down the conversation that actually matters. Because if nobody's willing to say this part needs work, the developers have no signal. Everything is fine, everything is great, everything is peak. And the stuff that needs fixing doesn't get fixed because the community filtered out the feedback before it ever reached the people who could act on it. It's so bad that the one true time that the developer has made a change to the game, the community jumped down Kim Ji-hoon's throat to change it back to his perfect original vision with Malfaust. We can love something and still see its flaws. It's not a betrayal. That's being a true fan. The people who care enough to say this isn't working are the people who want the game to be better. The people who shut them down aren't protecting the game, they're protecting their own feelings about the game. And look, I get it, alright? When something matters to you, hearing someone criticize it feels personal. But if you can't separate this game has problems from this game is shit, then I don't know what to tell you. You're in a parasocial relationship with the gacha game, and the first step is admitting it. Once you do that, then the rest of us can help you out. Here's where I land. Limbus Company is a game that reaches heights most gacha games don't even know exists. The writing, the music, the characterization, the IDs. When this game is at its best, it's in a league of its own. The everything in between stuff, the gacha model, the slow burn, the dual nature of the ID system, that's not a problem to solve. That's what this game is. It's the tension between the ambition and format, and most of the time that tension is what makes it worth playing. But the grind, the pacing, the power creep, the lack of endgame, these aren't features, they're structural problems. They're the kind of problems that make you love a game and resent it all at the same time. And pretending they don't exist won't make them go away. And maybe that's the most honest way to frame it. Hung-Lu watches the sinners suffer, and the 𝐸 find it entertaining. This is what Hung-Lu is forced to do. He, like us, are forced to watch. And sometimes playing Limbus Company feels exactly like that. You're watching something you care about struggle, and you can't look away. And part of you doesn't want to, because the struggle is where the story lives. The game rewards you for knowing its history, like knowing the bolus tech spiraled so far out of control that the head itself sent Bina, then Garyon, with 2 claws to wipe out the entire Kong family, just because 𝐸 wanted to get rid of some potential competition. Because the infection from the cuckoo people made them no longer human. The city has rules about that. Those threads don't just get handed to you, well, they're there, woven in, waiting for the people who care enough to pull. And that's what makes Limbus Company worth your time, even when it's wasting it. If you disagree with anything I said, good. Drop it in the comments section down below. That's what they're there for. And just actually engage with the point instead of telling me I'm wrong for having an opinion. But like always, guys, be good to each other. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.